introductions.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please, can you just shut down your video and mute for now until I call you to speak? Thank you. We're about to start. Thank you. Thank you.
Victoria, we've started now, so welcome everybody. I'll hand you over to our moderator, Victoria, who will take you through this morning's session. Victoria, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Dan. Greetings to you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct honor to welcome each and every one of you from different parts of the world to this maiden edition of the 2021 Africa Private Security Conference. The theme of today's conference is towards a safer continent. And you would all agree with me that the private security companies have a fundamental role to play in ensuring that we are safe in our homes, at our places of work, in our schools, at our places of worship. They are also responsible for ensuring the safety and security of the numerous organizations and the clients that they represent across the globe. What this means is that our collective efforts now translate into a continent where we can experience safety, where we can go about our normal activities and interaction with a relative sense of security. There's actually no gainsaying that you cannot thrive in the face of insecurity. So for any business to thrive, security must be at the core of its foundation. With that said, the expectation therefore is that the private security companies set the pace through the standardization of their processes in the face of the surging security problems across the world and especially on the African continent. Now, the question that readily comes to mind is this: should we allow the private security companies get involved in crime prevention? Something tells me now that many, if not most of you, would have responded in the affirmative. But before you respond to this question, it's important for you to note two more questions. And the first is, in the event they are given the opportunity to participate in crime prevention, do they have what it takes? In other words, are they equipped? Okay. And the second one is this: how would they handle human rights issues? Are we going to see something different from what we have seen in the mainstream law enforcement, like in the public security? Or are they going to toe the path of what we continually see in public security? This and many more are going to be unraveled in the course of today's conversation. I am very excited to announce to you that we have assembled a team of astute professionals from a diverse pool of expertise to talk to us today from the point of view of the certifying agency, from the point of view of the regulating agency, from the point of view of the private security service provider, and from the point of view of the consumer, that's the client. The actual aim of today's gathering is that at the end of the day, we have private security industry that has established, that is equipped to establish, to create, and to set the framework for private security intervention in crime prevention. My name is Victoria Nkemdele Obwehi, PCI, CPP, CB, CP, and I'm going to be your anchor for today. We'll be starting in a short while, and I want to welcome you all once again. A very quick housekeeping rule before we go on. You can already see that the chat area is open on the platform. The expectation is that you put down your feedback, you put down your comments, and you put down your question in that area. We'll be excited to respond to as many questions as possible in the course of the conversation. But one thing I want to assure you is that in the event we are not able to respond to your questions, we will try the best we can to send you feedback via the email addresses you provided in the course of the registration for this conference. I'm not going to be introducing all of the panelists at once. I'll be calling them and introducing them before they come to the speaker. The essence is that you do not forget who they are and you don't forget what they are talking about. So you can be, you can very well arrange your questions for them. The panelists already know that the time allotted to them is 15 minutes. And I want to urge each and every one of you to please stick to 15 minutes. If you can round up before 15 minutes, we will appreciate that. But you cannot go above 15 minutes. Else, I will stop you because I'll also be working as the timekeeper, you know, and I know you won't like to be stopped abruptly. So without much ado, I will be calling the first speaker for today's conference. And the first person that will be speaking to us this morning is Mr. Frank Amoyaw. Frank, I hope I called your name well. I didn't miscall it. Frank will be talking to us on, he'll be presenting to us a business case on why a local private security company, that is PSC, Landmark Security, decided to become ICoCa certified. As we progress in this conversation, you will understand what ICoCa is all about, because we're also privileged to have the CEO of ICoCa on the platform and also a member of the panelists. So, a brief bio of Frank. Frank is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Landmark Security Limited in Ghana. Since 2011, he's been on this role. He also serves as a Director of Castor Valley Landmark Limited. He supports small, medium enterprises, multinational companies, and multilateral organizations, including the United Nations Joint Program on HIV and AIDS, to optimize and achieve success globally. Frank, please. Welcome once again to the conference, and the floor is now yours. Thank you. Please turn on your video and unmute yourself to speak.
All right, thank you, Victoria. And I don't know if I can have access to share the screen to have my presentation on.
Sure, please, you can. Use the share screen portion to share whatever you have to present.
Okay, so it says host disabled participant sharing screen. So anyway, so whilst we try to fix that, probably I can just start a little bit about our operations.
Okay,
so I don't know
sounds good, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I mean, thanks so much, Victoria, but I think once we start the conversation, there are a few other thoughts that we would have to bring to bear on some of the rhetorical questions you asked. I mean, it's quite interesting, and so I'd like to share a little bit light on that as well. But first things first, so Landmark Security is actually based in Ghana, and we have operations in the whole of Ghana, and also we are covering the West Africa region. And like you rightly mentioned, our joint venture partner is Castor Valley, which is a UK-based company, and they are positioned to engage in the Eastern Africa region. And so invariably, we are covering the whole of Africa with some of these quality services that we provide. Just to kick off the conversation, we were actually, we were established in 2009. 2009, that's when we had our official documentation, but our operations actually started in 2011, and because we needed to put a couple of things in place. One of the things that we sought to do during the inception was to look out for, thank you, I can now have the presentation. Just a second. I don't know if everyone can see my screen.
I can see your screen. Your screen is up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So one of the things we sought to do during the inception was to look at how we can position ourselves in a way that will be meeting local standards and also meeting the international standards, because we had a couple of things in mind. So we went out there looking for global standards that would speak to the kind of things we want to do. And then we came up with ICoCa. At the time, they were now also in the formative stages and, you know, doing the stakeholder consultations and all of that. So we are proud to say we are part, or we are a founding member of the ICoCa, because we started from day one with them. I remember one of the meetings, they were like, okay, so how did you get to know about us? I said, if you look enough, you would find. And we also wanted to make sure that we were applying the international standards. So we got in touch with ICoCa, and then we all know what followed up next into the certification process. And one of the things we do in terms of our service offerings, primarily because we are set up as a private security company, we provide a lot of man guarding, close protective services, and supporting businesses that are operating in our region, and also making sure we're able to advise in terms of risk management and risk mitigation and all of that. And we have a couple of arrangements with the law enforcement agencies and also with the military, providing strategic support and sometimes using some of the retired military as advisors on some of the projects that we engage in. And currently, we are pivoting more towards providing maritime support because of the issues in the Gulf of Guinea and the fact that there are no indigenous companies that are positioned to be able to support this kind of activities in there. It's a tricky one, but we want to position ourselves to the extent that we're able to deliver, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be just the multinational companies operating in that area. So there are a couple of things we do, and our client base is huge. And so if you look at the client base and the foresight we have and the kind of things we want to do, then it becomes extremely important for us to look at how we can align ourselves and be able to commit to some of these standards that are already in the system. Of course, all the clients would also have a couple of due diligence checklists that they need to also subscribe to. And so it makes it much more easier for them to have assurance in the services you provide if you're able to get onto some of these things. For us, it is not just a matter of saying there's a check in a box, but more or less, it's something that we want it to be part of the culture of our operation. So everybody within the organization should live the kind of things that we do. We shouldn't be because we want to get certified and have something embossed on our walls. No, so that is the kind of thinking we put into some of this conversation along the line. In terms of international certification and membership, we currently we have certified on the 3 standards and also with the ICoCa. And so we've been extremely active and participate in all of these processes. We've also subscribed to a lot of the United Nations protocols, and we also provide support and guidance to some of the security companies in Ghana, hoping we can actually optimize and more or less get them to get into some of these conversations. Our principle, our understanding is that the more companies that get involved in some of these processes, the better for the industry. So we'll be able to have a level playing field. We would all understand all the issues in human rights, abuses and all that. We would all be able to collectively manage some of these conversations. So there are a couple of them that we have done. And also with our joint venture partnership, there are a couple more that are also available that helps us to be able to become more competitive. And so I just put in this slide to show how far we have come and the efforts we have put into all this process. Now, to the more substantive issue, a lot of times I have people ask me, so why would you even want to commit yourself into some of these things? Because I think it's time consuming. And I'm like, so why do you even want to do it? Because people look at the bottom line. Does it affect my bottom line? If it's not affecting my bottom line and the things that I'm doing still get me the results, then honestly speaking, there's less appetite to get some of these things. But like I keep saying, it's something that has to be intrinsic. So we as a company, strategically and through the board direction, decided that it is something that is worth doing and want to pursue it. It's insightful to understand or to know that we are the only indigenous local private security company in Ghana that has subscribed to all of these standards. None. So currently there are about 280 registered security companies. There are more that are not registered, but we are the only ones. If you find any security company that has any of these standards, it's probably because they are relying on their external companies or their multinational partners and all of that. So we are the only one, which keeps us out of the pack. And that leads to the business case conversation. So we asked ourselves that, what is it for us in terms of what we want to achieve at the end of the day? We looked at it from the point where if we are providing defensible, risk-driven, and process-based security operations, then we need to be aiming for some sources. What level of sources are we looking at? So the organization in total sought to achieve a few goals. And as you can see, there are 6 things that we wanted to achieve. 1, to be able to differentiate our services from those of our competitors. It's a differentiation game. The numbers is important, but we need to stand out of the pack. 2, we also wanted to in a way, be able to meet all social, legal, regulatory compliance obligations in an ever-changing environment. And everybody on this call would understand that the environment changes as rapidly as we can think about, especially in the security sector. Africa, West Africa, Ghana in particular, we have a few legacy issues that we carried along, colonial, post-colonial days. And so there are a couple of things that we are now getting used to. And so all of these things poses a lot of risks to our operations. And it is important for us to meet some of these obligations. And the only way we can meet some of these obligations is to look for some external assessment that would ensure that we are actually moving towards maturity. We also wanted to increase our ability to earn and maintain business from our clients pool. That is the bottom line. If we do all of these things and it doesn't bring us any net gains, then unfortunately it becomes a bad business for us. So we want to be able to maintain that. Our client base is huge and they look out for some of these things. So we also need to meet some of these obligations that is imposed on us by some of our clients. We also want to better align with management requirements and allotted resources. So we want to be able to look at, okay, how much resources are needed to be put into this and how does that align with the strategic vision that we have and how do we intend to achieve that at the end of the day. And last but not the least, we also want to be comprehensive and be able to engage our third parties and be able to have some measurement metrics in place to help us to be able to have the best out of the conversation. So these are the things that was running through our head in our quest to get into this conversation. Now, fast forward, narrowing down 3 of these things that I think are extremely important. One is the market differentiation. So like I said, there are about 260 or so private security companies in Ghana. We're all doing the same thing, Vanguard, and everybody's providing the thing. There's an association that comes in and says that, look, we think that at this point in time, this is how much we should be setting our pricing and all of that. But is that really going to take you out of the pack? And so you can see my little icon there where we are trying to stand out of the pack and differentiate ourselves. So the effort involved is to raise the maturity of our security operations to a certifiable level as a proof to clients that our organization is actively maintaining its security operations management posture. Everybody needs to be assured. I mean, you have tenders and clients who are sitting in different places who don't even know you. But what will be the assurance for them to say, I have reviewed your document, I have looked at this, and you are the best fit for this particular engagement? The bottom line for us is the ability to increase our selling opportunities by offering a mature and capable business operations that is certified to international standards. We can go into the nitty-gritties about whether the procurement agencies are really looking at what is expected. But the point is that we are looking at how we can sell ourselves and differentiate ourselves from the pack, and that is key. And I think that if there are people on this call who are still contemplating on what needs to happen, then this is one of the things that you can take home, that you need to differentiate yourself. We can't all be doing the same thing, or even if we are all doing the same thing, there should be something that makes you stand out of the pack. The next thing for me is being proactive, and being proactive versus reactive. In the absence of all of these standards and certification, you realize that our operations was not effective and efficient. So there are a lot of losses. There are a lot of losses that we incur financially, socially, and even ethically. That doesn't help our bottom line. So in getting into some of these conversations, it makes us more predictable because the standards are there. We want to be a proactive security company that is using a lot of the things that are important to the operations. So this allows our security function to be proactive by developing, deploying, managing, and maintaining an effective security operations. So everything has been standardized. You go through the process, so you're able to predict what is going to happen. And I think we would understand that in this type of environment, predictability becomes an important or an essential component of all of this security operations management. Our operations management is no longer forced into, let's say, constant firefighting. So you are then, you have a call, guys, you know, there's something you need to do, and then you are fired. No, that puts in a lot of stress on operations, and the usual lack of efficiencies is also avoided. We emphasize on a lot of this predictability because of the way we run our operations and our business. We are a very small team. And so we need to be extremely proactive in the things we do and be able to anticipate things that are going to happen and develop standards or develop SOPs and measures to address them as they evolve. And to me, the bottom line really is about reducing the effort and time to respond to both management and security issues, certainly in the security operations management cycle, and also reducing the number of audit or risk review cycles, thereby increasing efficiency. So the key thing for me on this conversation is about increasing efficiencies, if you're able to reduce your losses, or if you're able to limit the kind of unexpected things that you have to deal with, then you'll be making a better case. So it's a matter of being proactive. And then the last one, which is more of time-based assurance. So what is the assurance that this conversation brings to us? For us, we sought to identify what is in place now, but also monitor, review, and change controls if the environment dictates such changes. I mean, there are a lot of things that goes on in terms of why a company would even want to engage in some of these conversations and whether it is an essential component of their operations. We also want to adopt, or we've adopted this ISO standard requirement, and we are implementing a lot of this on an ongoing basis, which fits into the continuous improvement process that we have in place. So things that are happening, the lessons that are being learned, and the good things that are out of it are used to influence future conversations. The bad things, of course, then we begin to look at why should this even happen? And if there are no controls in place, we put those controls in place to be able to address some of these things. It is also critical that we look at the holistic picture. Sometimes people will ask me that it's expensive, but why do you want to do it? Do you know you can use this money to do other things? There are things that you can't put cost value on, but at the end of the day, ultimately, they inure to your benefit in the sense that they bring you a lot of credibility, reputation is increased, and you also get to work efficiently in a lot of ways. So the bottom line really in going through some of this time-based assurance is the fact that it provides, or it proves to management that the security operations management is operating effectively and has a positive return on investment. One of the things that a colleague asked me was that, so in all of this conversation, what is the return on investment? From our estimates, we are looking at about 25% return on investment between 2 to 3 years. And this can easily be obtained as long as you maintain the standards and you're able to deliver as is expected. One big contract that you get with less issues of non-conformance brings you more on your investment than any other thing you can imagine. It's just like saying that, okay, fine.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Please try to round up as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's fine. So, I mean, and also reduce the effort to provide ongoing compliance. So for me, the take-home message on this particular, this part of the conversation is the fact that certification is a dynamic process requiring at least annual audit and periodic renewal of the certification. The second point is the fact that it offers independent proof of our adequacy and the ongoing benefit of continuous process improvement. And lastly, it offers us and the client and management proof that the company continues to meet its due diligence obligations. Thank you. So I think I have some other discussion, but that will follow up during the question and answer time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Frank. You would all agree with me, members of the audience, that this presentation from Frank was quite insightful. Frank, if you are still there, I want to ask you one very quick question. I know it's not time yet, but I want to ask because I have the privilege to do that. So I just wanted to know at what point, because you said you started your company in 2009, by 2011, you went operational. So at what point, I know that ICoCa code was developed in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So at what point did you feel the need to do something different, to want to carve a niche for yourself? That's number one. Then number two is, would you say that Landmark Security is on top 5 security companies in Ghana, going by the fact that you had already told us that you have over 200 and something security companies in Ghana, but the Landmark Security happens to be the only company in Ghana that has met all of this certification and accreditation requirements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think from the inception, from 2009, before we decided to put up the company, it was one of the key conversation points for us. I remember asking the team that we need to get into this space, but we are not going to get into the space and do what everybody else is doing. And so they should look out and tell me what standards are there that govern security, private security operations that we could adopt to guide our operation. So it is from day one. And that is why our relationship with ICoCa has been extremely important and necessary, because we started off during their inception as well. And so we built that relationship over a period of time. So from 2009, the decision was made that we need to get into this conversation, and we need to ensure that we have standards. And by 20, I think the original deadline was by 2019, 2020, we should have been fully certified on all of this standard, but things happened. So there was a little bit of a delay, but it was from day one. Now to the second question, I would say if we are not the top security company, then we might be among the first two. But that also depends on what metrics you want to use to measure who is at the top. If you want to use financial gains, we might not be the most profitable in terms of bottom line security company. But if you look at other things in terms of quality delivery, reach and advocacy and making sure things are done properly, meeting all the standards that are required, then we would say we have differentiated ourselves properly. So maybe we can look at some metrics to determine who is on top, but we know what we are offering the Ghanaian population and also the West African region. No other person is doing that. And we are small, medium by choice. And so it's also one of the things that we look at.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Frank. I really appreciate your contribution, and I'm sure that lots of participants also love what they have gained by listening to you. So the next person that I will be calling this morning is the Chief Executive of ICoCa himself. And this is one man I've been looking forward to listening to before today's conference, because I just heard about ICoCa for the first time 2 months ago. I really never knew what ICoCa was all about. And it was interesting getting to know what ICoCa really stands for, though not in details. But this morning we have the Chief Executive Officer of ICoCa. His name is Mr. Jami Williamson. Williamson will be speaking to us today on the role of ethical governance in an international world. Like I said before, he is the Chief Executive Officer of ICoCa. He brings to the ICoCa a wealth of international, legal, military, and security experience. Joined the ICoCa in October 2017. He has published numerous papers on repression of war crimes, international justice, and challenges to international humanitarian law in modern-day conflicts, and is on the summer faculty of the Academy of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law at the American University in Washington, D.C. Mr. Jami, you are very, very welcome to this conference, and I hand the speaker to you at this point. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to all the participants for joining this event, and in particular, thanks to MSS Global for organizing this important discussion. And also a particular thanks to Frank, the previous speaker, who has made my task a little bit easier in explaining a little bit the background of the association and a little bit where we're going in terms of how the tide is turning and the issues we wish to address. I have about 10 or 12 minutes, I understand, so I'll be fairly quick and hopefully unpack some of the issues during the Q&A. I've been asked to speak about the sort of the international dynamics and how the focus, in particular, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, the sort of the human rights piece, in particular, the ethical piece, is slowly but surely gaining traction in the private security industry, and is also been an area of focus that the industry can show leadership in. And I think Frank's experience with Landmark as one of the security companies at the very beginning of the development of the code in 2010, but also during the formative years of the association from 2013 onwards, has been instrumental in that regard. I joined the association in 2017 at a time when there was, I dare say, still a substantive amount of cynicism, both within the security industry vis-a-vis their obligations and why they should apply and respect human rights in a sort of more rigorous manner, but also from outside of the industry with regard to the role that the security industry plays. And the cynicism levied against the security industry was a very negative perception of what security contractors and security providers actually offer. less the positive security component, but more the risks associated with anything which is deemed to be security in a high-risk environment, or any environment where security is required. My work with the association was not my initial step into the whole private security forum. I recalled about 15 or so years ago, in my previous capacity then as a legal advisor and operational advisor with the International Committee of the Red Cross, testifying before the Defence Portfolio Committee in South Africa. And the South African government then was reviewing legislation on the regulation of private military as well as security contractors, and developing regulation which would be tight, especially in terms of the exploitation of security services. And it was a bit of an eye-opener during that particular session to see how parliamentarians, civil society organizations and others were very critical of what security providers could offer as a service, and seemed not to recognize the added value and also the clear needs that were being fulfilled by security providers in South Africa and beyond. The security providers that actually testified in that particular session, without judging their reputation or others, had to build up a bit of a case and argue that we are not mercenaries. Even though there were local security providers, that was an argument that had to be made. Unfortunately for the security industry during that particular session, I think on the second day of that particular committee hearing, a news piece broke from the DRC with regard to operations involving a private security contractor, South African based, but operating in the DRC, and allegations that they may have been involved in some form of attempted overthrow or trying to destabilize the country. So suddenly all the good work that was going forward in terms of demonstrating the positive of the security industry was undone by a negative story coming from one particular country. And that, I think, builds on Frank's point, which is if you have one bad player in the industry, you're likely to have the whole industry tarred by that particular brush. So fast forward now about 15 or so years. Have we seen an evolution? Have we seen a demonstrable change in the narrative? At some levels, yes, to the extent that there's a much more focused understanding of what private security providers offer. Yes, there's still some confusion at the international level between mercenaries, military contractors, and security providers. But slowly but surely, we're undoing much of that. And much of our work here in Geneva at the multilateral level has been to work with governments and the United Nations and others to understand and to have them understand that there is this distinction to be drawn. But we're also seeing a sort of more media coverage of unsavory incidents involving private security providers and unsavory incidents involving private security providers across different client sectors. So it's no longer simply a question of the extractive industry as a major providers, but we as a major clients, but we are seeing many other sectors being likewise criticized for the manner in which they are using and their security providers, but also how they're treating their security providers and security guards. To give you a handful of examples, there in the avocado world, agribusiness, avocado farming, a private security company operating for an agricultural company, guards were involved in sort of human rights abuses, including rape and murder on the avocado farm that was supplying British supermarkets. The supermarkets in the UK dropped that plantation and dropped that supplier, and then there was a major, of course, stock and a sort of value hit as a result of those allegations against that particular security provider and its client. In Latin America, in Brazil, there's a story last year involving Carrefour and security guards that beat to death an individual outside a facility. That had a major impact on the reputation of Carrefour, its stock value in Brazil, and major demonstrations against the client, and arguments there about the security providers not having been properly trained. In East Africa, allegations linked to some of the extractive industry in the diamond field, and a recent suit or alleged suit was resolved through without any sort of liability being acknowledged, but a payment being made by the major client because of actions of a security company that they had hired. And that client is now looking to renegotiate with another security provider that meets its human rights obligations. In sports, there's also a different focus, no longer looking simply at the operations of security companies and the impact that they may have on individuals and their local communities and their human rights obligations, but more in terms of how the employees of security companies are being treated, how the security guards themselves are being paid, trained, recruited, selected, and vetted. And in Qatar, there have been many headlines over the past few months with regard to security guards and their working conditions, one or two individuals disappearing who had been on blogs. And of course, that is the sports world. It's the construction world. It's FIFA. It's sponsors that may go with that. And it's also terms and conditions of security guards and their treatment. And last but not least, Madam Chair, in terms of the evolution of the landscape, where the COVID-19 pandemic has also been an eye-opener to many with regard to the role that private security companies can play in many countries, and the fact that they were listed as essential workers, that they were crucial components for the response of many governments to handle and manage the consequences of the pandemic. But we also then saw questions being asked about the duty of care owed to the security providers and the security guards, as well as the physical and mental well-being of security personnel who were exposed to the pandemic and asked to operate in such an environment. So the narrative is changing. The focus of the discussions are clearly there, and we're seeing more and more specific stories being pushed out there of negative pieces vis-a-vis the security industry. But as Frank mentioned earlier, we have a great opportunity to shape the narrative in a positive. I think through the work of the association, which is a multi-stakeholder organization involving security companies, not only as part of the development of the code, but also key members of the development of these procedures, of our tools and guidance that sit on our board, there's an opportunity for the security industry to demonstrate that it is showing leadership in that regard, that it is committed to good ethical practices which fully respect the code and human rights. And I think today, before going to the main multilateral developments, it's no longer a question of a nice to have, of tick in the box exercise, of security providers asking a question simply from a commercial vantage point. What is the added value of the association? I've heard that question being asked 1,000,001 times by security providers and commercial clients about the added value of the association. And I will challenge any organization out there, building on what Frank mentioned as well, that there is no price to be put on respecting human rights. If you fail to respect the content of the International Code of Conduct, if you're unable to translate a commitment to international standards into real practice, into sort of deliverables, into quantifiable best practices and culture and leadership development within your company, and if there is a human rights abuse or an allegation of human rights abuse, the added value will be clear because the reputational as well as financial impact on the security provider will be multifold more than the cost of, for instance, working with the association and being certified and benefiting from capacity building. And the nice to have, Madam Chair, in the few minutes I have, is also being demonstrated by the developments we're seeing at the international level. So we have at least two points or mechanisms I can point to. The first is the open-ended intergovernmental working group. It's a United Nations open-ended intergovernmental working group. And I'll read out its mandate, which may take 5 minutes. It has a mandate to elaborate the content of an international regulatory framework without prejudging the nature thereof, to protect human rights and ensure accountability for violations and abuses relating to the activities of private military and security companies. A bit of a mouthful, unfortunately. It's chaired by South Africa, and they are looking to develop an international treaty, an international regulatory framework, which will focus specifically on how private security companies and military providers or military contractors are respecting and integrating human rights into their processes. The second, I think, main area to consider is that the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights marked their 10th anniversary last year. And the International Code of Conduct Association has been seen as a model stakeholder organization, sector-specific, that can be of great benefit to ensuring respect for human rights by businesses along the supply chain where security is involved. And that is, I think, a positive development in that regard. Last point, Madam Chair, was that we want to leave time for Q&A as well. There are also new levels of leverage coming forward. Much of the debate that we've had so far has been focusing on what security providers can do and can achieve. The leverage today is actually working its way upstream. There are pressure points on the clients, those that hire security providers, their obligations under the international legal frameworks and what they should be doing. We're seeing that leverage being, let's say, witnessed at different levels. There's, of course, the banking world is looking at de-risking their financial investments where there's a possibility of security providers not respecting human rights, or where the clients of those security providers may be falling short of human rights responsibilities. We are seeing investor alliances where the money is, especially for multinationals, delisting not only the multinational clients and international clients, but also security companies, the larger ones, where there are human rights concerns. We are seeing a greater pressure from end users as well, and we're seeing pressures on corporate and governance structures within organizations to ensure that human rights policies are no longer a tick-the-box exercise. So, Madam Chair, to conclude, clearly we have seen an evolution of the landscape. This is a great opportunity for the security industry to step up with the association, through certification, with transparency and benefiting from capacity building, to show leadership in this regard. Because it's no longer a question of whether or not there's an added value. It's simply going forward, it is going to be something that if you're not respecting human rights and not being seen to fully implement elements within the code and other human rights instruments, then sooner or later the business case will be self-evident, because there will be a loss of reputation, a loss of profits, and a loss of contracts. Madam Chair, I'll pause here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jami. Before now, I was going to ask why the emphasis on human rights? At the ICoCa code, I saw a lot of things about human rights protection. I was going to ask why, but from your presentation, it is very clear why. But another question I want to ask that is not clear to me is that I want to know the level of awareness that you've created from your end, because to me, it is not clear how much these private security practitioners know about the ICoCa. I want to specifically inquire from you, how many African companies are signatories to the ICoCa code? Do you have an idea?
Thank you very much. And the awareness piece is the most challenging, to be honest. In part, that comes, and maybe Frank can, he'll recall those early days. In part, the awareness piece was because of the focus too much on one or two key contexts. The security landscape was looked, and the focus in the early days, especially around 2010, was on Iraq and Afghanistan in particular. So one had to unpack that piece and say, well, it's not only about those contexts, it's a global industry. And what is quite surprising is actually quite a few people, even here in Switzerland, don't seem to actually recognize the fact that security providers are everywhere. It's nearly as though there's the invisible security in many ways, and despite the fact that everyone is using security. And so there was also that kind of awareness piece in terms of having folk understand security is being used in contexts all over the world. And our membership and our diversity of our membership, and I'll see some familiar names as part of the participants, show that as well. The number of signatories in the early days, when the code was first launched in 2010, was 700 signatories, give or take, globally from different parts of the world. A pinch in terms of the environments that we could potentially look into, and maybe understandable because initially our focus was on complex environments, but we're moving beyond that. The challenge, and this is where companies like Landmark have taken up that responsibility, was it was one thing signing the code, but the hard work was the next stage, is actually implementing the code, being more transparent, having capacity efforts carried out with the association, being open to monitoring and other bits and pieces, and going through certification processes where possible. And when that's been put to companies, it becomes the business case, and I think that Frank was speaking to as well. The added value, why should I do more? Are clients going to ask that of me? And so the transition from signatory company to actually a full member became either a challenge or, again, an area full of cynicism by some of the signatory companies out there. 10 years on, that is moving. And I think today we're seeing him. Every day I receive half dozen applications from security providers because there is this growing awareness. But we're at the start of the process, even though that's 10 years on. And this conference is, again, another example of how we can open up the understanding of what we're trying to do within the industry with the association and its partners.
Thank you, Jamie. But you are not sure how many African companies are signatories or members of the ICoCa, right?
I couldn't give you an exact number. I mean, I could look it up during the Q&A, but I would say at least in terms of African companies integrated in Africa, I'd say at most 10%. But there are plenty of companies, international ones, operating in Africa that are either partnering up or have operations and have even bought up local providers that are members of the association. But there's certainly much more that can be done here also on the continent to bring more African companies to the table.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So it's time to take the next speaker. And the next speaker will be speaking from the point of view of the consumer, the client. And that is Adedeji Oduba. Adedeji is an astute security professional. He's also a security consultant, loss prevention expert, and a risk manager with over 15 years cognate experience. He has been actively involved in broad range of security risk management and consulting in the West Africa sub-region. He has been responsible for providing and delivering risk-based solutions in different sectors, ranging from the FMCG to the oil and gas sector, to the NGOs, to the financial institutions, to mention but a few. Today, he will be talking to us on why the clients of private security companies want security providers that follow best practices. Everybody wants someone that follows best practices and respects human rights. Adedeji.
Thank you, Victoria.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. I can just provide an answer in 30 seconds and everybody will be home and dry. So, why do clients of private security companies want service provider that follow best practices and respect human rights? It's simple. It is for their own peace of mind. Okay, that's on a lighter note, but within the next couple of minutes, I'll walk us through two different angles to it. First is, what do such private security companies bring to the table? And I will try to round up by looking at benefits to the client. So to look at what such private security companies bring to the table, that is, security companies that follow best practices and respect human rights. The first one is reputation. They boost the reputation of the client. How do I mean? A wise man once said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and just 5 minutes to ruin it. It does not matter what that organization has been doing. The moment you go into alliance with a service provider that is not on the same level, and in terms of that, I speak to best practices. It does not matter what line of business you are into, FMCG, consulting, financial institution, irrespective of what you have done, irrespective of what the people know you for, if you have a relationship with a service provider that is not on the same level as your organization, you will struggle, and this would affect your reputation. And also it would impact on your customer service. For instance, every time you go to any organization, the first person that you meet will probably be one of the members of the security team. So at the point of going into any organization, chances are the very first person you meet is a security guard. And if this individual does not have what it takes, you might decide not to even continue with engaging such a company. So your reputation and customer service, this might be impacted. Again, the other bit I want to look at, which will be my second point, is compliance to legal requirements. I might not know what is obtainable outside of, in the West, but in Nigeria, where I am based and operate, it is expected that you work for 80 hours, 40 hours in a week, okay? If the service provider is not such that pays attention to this, they could have some very funny shift arrangements, which at the end of the day would have an effect on the operatives. An operative that has been working for long hours would at some point will not be active, may not be agile, his concentration level would drop, and this would have an impact on the facility. Every organization, before you go into partnership with any service provider, it is expected that you look at the organization very well, know what they stand for, understand their antecedents, and decide based on available data if this is the organization you want to work with or not. It does not matter what they tell you, but I would expect the same way before you go into agreement with anybody, you do your due diligence, understand what they stand for, and look for how compliant they are to best practices. I'll just share a story, and some of the things I will talk to will be some of the things that have happened to me in my previous experience. Some time ago, I was working for a multinational, and then we needed to change our guard force. Okay, as a member of the Overseas Security Advisory Council, OSAC, in Lagos, what I did then was, okay, having it at the back of my mind that OSAC is a respectable organization, I sent out an email to the general body asking members of the group if they could help me, if they could recommend some trusted security service provider to me. And then I recall vividly that ExxonMobil, Chevron, and a few other players in the oil and gas industry came back to me mentioning the name of a particular service provider. Wow, that for me was a turning point. I looked at it that if the ExxonMobils of this world, if the Chevrons of this world, if all these players in the international oil and gas industry could be so confident recommending on a general platform a particular service provider, then there could be something this guy or these guys are doing rightly. So I engaged them, and I was not surprised when I went to meet the company. I was wowed. This is a company that follows best practice. It's a Nigerian company. I'm not here to sell any organization, but back then, I'm talking of some 7-8 years ago, they had some certification with ISO, different certifications, both locally and internationally. This for me was a wow moment. And I went into partnership with them, and throughout my engagement with this service provider, I got wow every day. This is an organization that knows its onion, and they were constantly improving on their deliverables. So again, compliance to legal requirements, which is what I'm speaking to. Some service provider today out there, we all know we have 1,001 security service providers around us. Some of them do not even issue to their operatives or to their employees an employment letter. So they engage them based on verbal commitment. Okay. you are expected to have annual vacation. I'm not sure every organization is doing this, but when you speak to a company that knows its onion, following best practices, these are some of the basic things that their men or their team enjoys. And at the end of the day, it has a way of positively impacting your operation as the client. The other bit I want to speak to is talking about respect of individual, or let's say human rights as a whole. Yes, I operate more in the FMCG sector, and let's just assume an individual has been caught for pilfering or for pilfering products. I do not expect that because this individual was caught doing the wrong thing, my own team would also go to that level, to assault him physically, except even when there is provocation. For a service provider that knows its onion, your men are trained to remain calm and cool, even in the face of aggression. Okay, you understand when to use force. Use of force is taught to them. You know when to use force, when to apply force, when to escalate, and how to de-escalate issues. So these are some of the benefits. These are some of the things we expect from a service provider that is following best practices. I want us to also consider this. Yes, information is very vital. Okay, I used to work for an organization many years ago. They always we pride ourselves as saying, take away our people, take away our assets, take away everything about us, but leave us with our people. We will come back stronger in the next 10 years. Okay, why is this organization saying this? The people have a lot of information and know-how. For every organization, your information, which is one of the intangible assets you have, should be protected and protected well. By virtue of the job the service provider, the private security companies are rendering, they have access to some of your information. So if you are working with a company that does not follow best practices, chances are your information will be in the open. Okay, and of course, information makes an organization tick. So one of the things that private security companies following best practices do is that they understand and they respect the terms of confidentiality. Okay, and confidentiality, a wise man once said, is the essence of being trusted. So they understand this and they follow it to the letter. Before they bring anybody to join their team, they do their own background screening. They do due diligence even before forming alliances with any other organization, and they ensure that all their employees sign the non-disclosure agreement, which is an NDA. With this, you are bound. Whatever you see, you should not disclose it. But this is not what every organization would do, except for those that really know the what of doing all of this. Okay, and then I would love to round up by saying, following all of this, or such a private security company, what benefits do they bring to you as a client? I know we have some security managers here who also will be interested in this. The number one thing for you is that because they are following best practices and they respect human rights, you will have good public image as an organization. How do I mean? Many organizations in my part of the world, aside the fact that you have the security guards, you also have armed men that are providing additional protection for your facility. So you can imagine if one of your armed men assaults somebody that lives in the community. Some time ago, there was a report. I don't know if some of us will recall this, of a policeman that assaulted somebody on the island. Okay, the policeman was posted to a financial institution. He assaulted a public member, and then it was bad press for this organization. You don't want to be in that situation. So having an alliance with a company that is following best practices will take this off you. Good press, you don't need to worry about bad press reports, and then your public image would also be boosted. Even for the team itself, this would have good impact on members of the team because they are observing their vacation as at when due. They are not working excessive hours. If at all they have to work excessive hours, they get compensated adequately for this. So their morale is boosted, and this would have an impact on the facility they are protecting. Another thing I want to speak to is, many of us see this on the road. I see some service provider, not every one of them, because I see some organization, even on the Lagos road, when they are on their journey management movement, you will never see their service provider chasing other road users off the road. This tells you the kind of organization they are from. Whereas you see some other organizations, when they are moving their principal from point A to point B, you see them chasing people off the road, putting other road users in a very risky situation. They are not mindful of that, but you also see some other service provider who knows that their own duty is to securely move their principal from point A to point B, okay? No matter how difficult it is for them, even in the course of their movement, they still maintain their sanity. This is one of the things a good service provider will do for you. And last but not the least, for such organization, expectedly, more businesses would come in. I just mentioned what happened in my own case when I needed to change service provider, and I reached out to an organization, a body of security experts, okay, and I got a particular company, not one, not two, not three different organizations referred that organization to me. Another example I want to speak to before rounding up, the moderator is there, so I know I need to round up. The last addition was something that also happened to me some years back in one of the organizations I worked. I had a responsibility for some other West African states. So I went to Dakar in Senegal for some work, and then I attended the OSAC country security meeting. You know, I made myself known, and then I used to get a lot of contact, a lot of inquiries from Dakar. There was an organization that visited Senegal for the very first time. They were looking at coming into West Africa to open up their business. So the guy was flying in from Dakar. While he was in Dakar, he got my contact from the OSAC headquarters, and he reached out to me. The only thing he wanted to know was, Deji, could you tell me a security company that could provide ABCD for me? And of course, this was just not about a year or two after I started a relationship with the company that was referred to me from OSAC. So I was very glad to recommend such an organization for him. There and then they went into partnership, and again, like I said, more businesses would always come in. This is an American company that was coming into West Africa for the very first time. So that individual, that security manager, will definitely go back home because he's satisfied with what he sees and mention the name of this organization to some of his peers. So with that, I think I can round up. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Deji. You have said a whole lot, but I'm just curious to know if the clients that we service, if they are aware of the fact that there are certain certifications that these private security companies and private security service providers are supposed to have. If there are some regulations that it's supposed to guide their processes. Because I'm asking this because many of the times, in fact, all of the times that I have seen publications like for call for bidding, right? I see what the expectations are. You should be able to show some evidence that your company is registered with the CAC and all of that. You should have been in the industry for like 10 years and all of that. I've never seen them emphasize issues related to certification. So I wanted to know what exactly is your yardstick for placing this, for assessing this private based on your vast experience, especially in many big companies in sub-African West region. You've worked as country security manager, regional security, and all of that. So what do you usually look out for? Because to the best of my knowledge, many of these companies do not know what to even look out for in engaging private security companies.
All right, Vicky. To be honest with you, it takes two to tango. I mean, when you pay monkeys, you will definitely, when you pay bananas, you definitely get monkeys, like they say. For some organizations, they really do not care. For some organizations, they see security as a cost center. Okay, we in security, to them, we are not generating funds. So in view of that, they don't really care what they get. But for some organizations that know their onions, for organizations that know their onion, they know what they are looking for. For instance, like you pointed out, yes, there could be a proposal or a bid. Maybe they open a bid, tender to bid. I'm sure if the criteria does not meet some minimum requirements, you will see some organization not responding. This organization, I'm talking about the private security companies here. So for instance, I work for organization A and I need to change my service provider, and I'm throwing out a bid, okay? I'm asking for potential service providers to send in their proposals. If what I am looking for does not meet their own minimum requirement, some of them will not come in. Like I said, it takes two to tango. So I think we also, I want this to be a feedback for MSS Global. While we are looking at driving the awareness among the private security company, I think a lot of work also needs to be done to drive the awareness among the security professionals. Okay, what you don't have, you cannot give. For some of us in the industry, and you will agree with me, Victoria, for some of us in the industry, it is just about guards, gun, and gates. So once you can put the guards and with a gun at the gate, they are fine. No processes, no policies, nothing. So until we get to that level where everybody understands that there is a need for processes and procedures and certification in codes, then we will not be out of this discussion.
Thank you so much, Adedeji. Thank you. So glad to hear from you. So the next session now is a question and answer session. Yeah, Deji, thank you for putting off your video. So we just go to the question and answer session I'm going to pick some of the questions, if not all of the questions, and let's see how fast we can respond to them from members of the panelists. Number one question says, during the pandemic, security personnel in the private security industry were out 24/7, ensuring that clients are serviced according to subsisting service level agreements. However, most, if not all, of these guards did not have the same level of motivation that other cadre of workers had for obvious reasons. Now, talking about duty of care, who bears the cost of duty of care to this set of people working throughout the pandemic to ensure business continuity and protection of assets? So this question in a nutshell is asking, who is responsible for the duty of care of a guard or an operative that has been deployed to the field in case the person, for instance, contracts the COVID-19 virus? Who is going to be responsible for this person? That is just the long and short of this question. Yeah. And I want to call, I don't know if any member of the panelists wants to volunteer. Otherwise, I want to call Frank to respond to this question. Frank.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Victoria. So I think that it's a two-way thing. as a private security company, we have an obligation towards our employees, regardless of where we position them, especially when they are in harm's way. And also, as a client who requires the services of our operators, they also have a duty of care to ensure that we have a very good and safe environment to operate. And one good example for us is, for instance, during the COVID period, we had a couple of clients where we had about, for one side, we had about 28 guards deployed. We had anticipated some of these conversations because of the foresight we had and the business continuity models that we had already gone through with our guards. So we told them that, look, from what we are looking at and from what data we are receiving, and it's data driven, there's going to be a couple of things. One, there's going to be lockdown. We are not too certain how soon the lockdown is going to end. And so let's have a process in place to ensure that we provide the necessary support for the guards. And one of the things I told them, look, if you don't come in to support us to get this achieved, what is going to happen is that the guard decides to stay at home, and then your site becomes vulnerable. So you also have an obligation, irrespective of whether you are paying me at the end of the month or not, there's an obligation that also falls on your part to support. And we had a very mutual agreement. And so our client actually asked us to provide all the things we wanted to do, providing PPEs, making sure we're providing them 3-course meal, because at the end of the day, they couldn't leave their sites to go and look for food since all restaurants were closed down and all of that. And we managed to have a very smooth operation, and the business continued to, deliver as expected. So I think it's a conversation between the client and the provider. But this conversation needs to happen. And I think it feeds back into the third-party conversations you have when you are doing some of these standards. It opens up the conversation. Well, who are your interested parties? Is it the government? Is it the client? The client is part of the conversation. And so once this thing happens, it's just like it's structured. It is well structured, and you know who to speak with and what conversation to put on the table and how you can get some of these things addressed. So we managed to do a lot of these things as ease. I had other competing companies who told me they couldn't provide anything for their guards. And so the guards were demoralized. And it also feeds back into the human rights conversation we are having. We know the industry pays little because the clients are always looking to the bottom line. They want the cheaper bid, not even in terms of quality. And so, like Deji explained, if the client understands the implications for they always pushing for lower bids, then they'll be able to change the narrative. And Jamie has actually alluded to a lot of these things. Currently in Ghana, they expect you to run a 12-hour shift, working 5 days in a week. And so you're asking yourself, is this something we really want to continue to do? If all of these international things are being pushed forward, can we get a client to accept the fact that an 8-hour shift, it's sufficient to get everything done, and running 3 shifts gives you maximum benefit? Then again, you need data to support some of these things. And so I think it's an ongoing discussion, an ongoing conversation, but the duty of care conversation is a two-way stream where everybody needs to play a part in terms of getting some of these things done. Over.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you. So I want to take the next question, and that's, I want Deji and Adedeji and Chinweke, Barrister Chinweke, to just get ready because either of them would answer this question. So Senator Irebu wants to know, let me go back there just a second. And so he says, he wants to know the level of human rights violation by private security companies in Nigeria. Most times the report of rights violations we read is by the state security agents. How often does private security agents suffer rights violations from the state security agents? What level of training and standardization for the personnel of the PSC? This person is a journalist and he wants to know this. I don't know, Barrister Chinweke, are you there?
Yeah, very much.
Can you help us respond to this question, especially with emphasis in 2 and 3? How often does private security agents suffer rights violations from the state security agents? And what level of training and standardization for the personnel of the PSC? Deji could answer the B part, but please help us answer the first one. How often does private security agents suffer right violation?
Okay. In 2018, we carried out baseline study on private sector governance in Nigeria, and we find out that part of the areas we look into is issue of how do the private sector companies operate with state actors, that is the public security agencies. And we notice that most often they are actually one of their key partners. And the issues of human rights violation from the private public security agencies are very rare, actually very rare, because of there's a good working relationship between the public-private public security agencies and the private security agencies. There is a good working relationship, and which has been, I think it has been a strategic way, way, because it helps to them to easily, when they do arrest, when they apprehend a suspect or somebody, they easily refer and take that person to public security agencies. So there have been that good working relationship between the private and the public security organizations in Nigeria. So there's no rare report of any abuse by the public to the private security organizations. So that is what I can say for now. But obviously, private security agencies, organizations, companies do encounter issues of human rights. They also do perpetrate issues of human rights. The issue of accountability is what the regulators also are supposed to look into. And from the research, we found that also there's actually not an effective mechanism to monitor and to report human rights abuses from the companies at the field, to the regulators. And that is a broad issue of ineffective accountability, as in the case of where there's a human rights violation by the private sector companies.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chinweke. Thank you. Adedeji.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria.
So please, I want you to respond to this part with emphasis or making reference to what the expectation from the civil defense is as a regulating agency in Nigeria. What's their expectation for training and standardization in guard manning services?
Okay, yeah, I mean, currently, I know the body has been doing a lot, and just before the pandemic, just before the pandemic, they rolled out a plan where every operative will be issued a certificate. It's just like you going to any training school, maybe an aviation training school. They already, as of today, I am aware of this, they have concluded plan, they have standardized their training, and they have identified potential service providers. I mean, that's talking about organizations that will be training all the guards. So I think it's a good development, and I think if they can start this, we would have the same kind of knowledge across the organization, because what they are looking at is once you go through such training, when you are coming out, you are licensed and given a number. Today, I know of 2 service providers that are already, they have the facilities, it is just this COVID-19, this pandemic that has prevented them from starting. So the NSCDC has put a robust plan in place where anybody that wants to go into security company, either as a guard or supervisor, you go through a set training. And at the end of the day, when you successfully complete the training, you'll be issued a license to operate either as an operative, a supervisor, or whatever level, and then you have a kind of do I call it number given to you, which would be your own personal identification number across the industry.
Thank you for doing justice to that question. I want to quickly take two more questions before we go to the next. Two more questions before we go to the next presentation. I'm just trying to scroll up to where the question is. Okay, this person says the presentation of James and Adedeji seems to make it clear that security companies need to clean up their own houses before they can hope to set any benchmark. Maybe being members of different associations can help by acting as an oversight. But how does one decide which association to subscribe to? Jonah, if you can hear me, can you please respond to this? At what point can you decide what should be the criteria for making a decision that now I am a practitioner and I want to belong to an association in furtherance of my interest? Which of these organizations should be the best one for me to belong to? Jonah, please.
All right, thank you very much, Victoria. I believe at the moment currently we have the Association of Licensed Practitioners, Private Security Practitioners in Nigeria, which I believe most local companies belong to, right? That could form a basis for where you can kickstart your career to get basic information. However, right, if you listen to what Frank said earlier, at the onset, when they were kicking off, they sat down to decide how they wanted to distinguish themselves in the market. And clearly they went to do their own search. That was how they came in contact with the International Code of Conduct Association. So if you ask me, at what point do you decide? Let me look at that again. Sorry. How does one decide which association to subscribe to? I think in deciding which association to subscribe to, it has to be tied to the objective of your company. Where are you going to? What's your vision? What's your mission? What do you want to achieve out of the market? Do you just want to serve a particular niche? Do you want to be a broad-based security company? Where are you going to? That should form the basis of your decision. We cannot clearly say these are the associations you need. There are a lot of associations you might want to belong to, but it has to be based on where you're going to as an organization. That will help you form your decision rightly.
Thank you so much,
Victoria.
Jonah.
This is Jamie here. If I may just add a comment element to what Jonas just said.
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, I think it's also you need to look at what the mandate of the association actually is. There are different associations out there, from trade associations to business associations to unions for guard protections, as well as the association, the ICoCa, vis-a-vis international standards and human rights. So I think the way to also do it is a bit of an integrated approach. It's not simply one or another association. It could be more than one association based on the mandate of that association and what that association can do as a benefit for that particular company. But I make that distinction between trade associations, labor associations, and international associations like the association, like the ICoCa.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you. So the next question I see in the question and answer session is, well, we are not going to be responding to this question, but I just wanted you to know that we picked the question. It says, how can one join the association? So knowing which association to belong is one question, and how to join is another. So I want you to pay attention to when Jonah will be making his presentation, and he's going to be speaking immediately after the next speaker that will be calling up now. So please pay attention, because I'm sure he's going to be sharing the details of how you can join the association. I'm sure you are talking about ICoCa and perhaps getting the certifications from MSS Global. So at this point, we'll move to the next session, and very soon we'll be rounding up, hopefully. So the next presenter I'll be calling up this morning is Barrister Chinweke Okereke. Chinweke Okereke will be talking about the importance of professional companies in supporting the achievement of a safe community, environment, and respect for human rights. Chinweke Okereke is an international human rights and development law expert, the founder and chief executive officer of the Africa Law Foundation, AfriLaw. He is currently coordinating the Strengthening Private Security Regulations and Oversight in Nigeria project, in partnership with the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance, the CAF, in Switzerland. He will be talking about the importance of professional companies in supporting the achievement of a safe community. Thank you so much for coming, Barrister Chinweke, and the platform is yours for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Victoria. AFRILAW is a law, justice, and development organization, and by grace of God, we are working towards sustainable development through law, justice, and human rights. And a part of what we do is to promote security sector governance and reform. And in that regards, and also we have some competence and doing work in the areas of business and human rights, and that is a corporate accountability. And in relation to these two areas, we started looking into private security governance in Nigeria. And as Victoria rightly said, we have been working for 2 years now, going to 2 years with the CAF. And we started by conducting a study, trying to understand what is the situation of private security industry in Nigeria. Now, what are the challenges? What are the gaps? What can be done to improve it? So, and that research work was launched in 2019. And 2020, we started a project together with the CAF, strengthening private sector regulation and oversight. And part of that research is actually what I want to discuss with you, especially the areas of the importance of having private sector companies developing a standard, a professionalism, and the why we should Nigerian companies in particular, and especially companies in Africa, should do everything possible to enhance their competence and improve their work. And we during our research, the baseline study on private security governance in Nigeria, we found out that the industry in Nigeria is growing. In short, currently now we have over 1,000 registered companies operating in Nigeria, and the civil defense, which actually the regulators, are actually doing a lot to regulate it within the capacity and the resources available. I know the increasing nature and the expansion of the industry brought a lot of challenges to the industry. And over the time, there has been efforts to regulate and make sure that the standard is improved, especially in the areas of professionalism and in areas of making sure that there's a proper code of conduct and respect of human rights. And in 2018, the regulators came up with what they call private companies regulations, where they articulated some kind of guideline that can enhance the performance of the companies in Nigeria, especially. And that regulation makes specific provisions as regards some activities and offenses the companies operating in Nigeria, especially, should avoid. And under Article 21, it mentioned that the companies or its employees engaging or acting and performing the duties of the military or police or paralegal services is not allowed. They barred the companies, private company, to go into such areas, and also the guards and group of forming or joining in union, they also stop them from joining a union. So they also provided against torture, engaging in a human treatment, or anything that is discriminatory and inhuman treatment and torture. There's issue of sexual exploitation, of gender-based violence, and the prostitution and rape and all that. The guideline, the regulation abhors that, and also it made provision for slavery, forced and compulsory level, and is covered, made a provision on that area, and safeguarded and made it that is against the law and against the guideline for any company or officer to engage in such areas. And also they look into issue of child labor. You cannot employ any person below the age of 18 years. So we found out that there is actually some these provisions, but in the field we noticed that that is not always the case, because through the research we have noticed that many companies because of the loopholes, some regulatory framework challenges which the regulators are battling with. There is a high number of unregistered companies which over the time are actually being a bad name to the sector. We discover some preventing professional misconduct and malpractices, and which such companies are bringing to the sector, and also the existing companies are also having a lot of issues of misconduct and malpractices. The issue of negligence to duty, the issue of bribing, bribes, corruption, the issue of conniving with criminals, and some inconsistent behaviors and all that. And we noticed that there is not actually a standardized code of conduct and ethics framework that guides, apart from the regulations, that guide the day-to-day behaviors and actions of these officers in the field. And we discovered there's no standardized complaint mechanism for any persons or individual that has issue of violations or misconduct. Then how do the person go about reporting or complaining? So the accountability issue is mechanism is not effective. We discovered that most often the cases of abuse and misconduct are not adequately reported and not adequately monitored, only not adequately reported, and the remedy is actually almost not there. Most of them, from the research, we found out that do report to Nigeria police, other public agencies, not even the regulators, and also some of them report to Human Rights Commission, and in the cases of the communities or people that suffer the violation from these companies. So we found that it is very, very necessary that there should be a mechanism, a standardized process for checkmating and also regulating the activities of these companies in the operations and whatever they do. And to be frank with you, we are under this project. We are working with the CAF and the Civil Defense and the Association to improve the legal framework. The law, the Private Security Guards Act, is being currently reviewed, and also there is actually increasing issue of awareness. Part of what we did is to have a stakeholders awareness forum, what we call Private Security Governance Forum, across the six geopolitical zones. And we understood from that there is a lack of awareness. People did naturally appreciate so much the work and the impact of the security services, notwithstanding there is an increased demand of their use and their services in the country because of the inherent and the increasing and prevailing insecurity and insecurity in Nigeria. So as I said, during our research, we found out that there's various human rights challenges confronting this sector, and because there is no effective mechanism, we made some propositions in our study. That's the need for Nigeria to adopt, especially ICoCa and the code, the provisions of the International Code of Conduct for Private Security Service Providers, which has a good provisions covering these areas we are able to see, identify from the field. And during our project, we are also promoting Nigeria, signing up to this international initiative, that is the ICoCa and the Montreal document, and also the Rotary Guiding Principles on Security and Human Rights, which provide some guidelines for companies working in the extractive sector. That is the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, which has been a very, we are having a lot of many cases of human rights abuse by security agencies, especially public security agencies. But because of the nature of the work, the private sector companies always work in partnership with the private security agencies. In many cases, they are found complicit in the situation of human rights abuses with where they are partnering or cooperating with the private security, public security companies. So there is need to have a mechanism that streamline. How do private security companies work with public security agencies? So that it's going to help to ensure accountability and ensure that there's a proper respect of human rights, and there's a standardization of operations and standard and compliance with also good practices. So we through our research, we found out that the issues like there's low capacity in areas of human rights protection enforcement by the agency, that is a civil defense, and other key private security stakeholders in Nigeria. And there's also issue of poor and inadequate human rights monitoring. As I said, documentation and reporting. Mostly what we see is even civil society members who do have some cases and report it, and the public are not aware where and who they should report to in cases of human rights abuses by these companies. And these issues are not helping the sector, which is growing drastically and developing drastically, and which implies that there is a need to have a international, compliant standard and code of conduct that will guide these companies to be more effective and responsible in their services in Nigeria and other across Africa. And that's where we are actually canvassing and making a serious proposal to the Nigerian government and agents and the civil defense, the regulators, to join ICoCa, join the Montreal document, and also join the VP, so that they would be better positioned and understand this international initiative that can bring about standardization and professionalism and the compliance with code of conduct, which is actually lacking in what within the industry in Nigeria. And to be frank with you, many of the companies we interacted with during the private safety governance forum event we had just the last one was in March this year. Most of them are actually interested. And unfortunately, we have only 8 Nigerian companies who are members of ICoCa, and that is very poor. To compare that, we have more than 1,000 registered companies operating in Nigeria. 8 to 1,000 is abysmal. And we are hoping by our current partnership with the association and the partnership with the regulators, many of the companies we start to understand the need to join ICoCa and they standardize the operations and get this necessary certification that will help them to be effective, responsible in what they are doing.
Thank you so much, Chinweke. Thank you. You've just said a lot, but one of the challenges from everything you've said is the fact that we do not have all of the data we need to make informed decision. It's good to know that from your end, you are doing a lot with regards to research and statistics and all of that. So all of the information you are bringing to us, you are bringing from the point of view of the data available to you. But a very quick one before we go to your session of question and answer. Somebody also asked from South Africa, and it's a question that is very dear to my heart. I don't know if you can respond to that. What have you been doing with your team regarding the very meager salaries that these private guard operators or these private security operatives take home. You know, we all know that they pay them so meagerly that they are not even motivated. Some of them are old. Some of them do not get the salaries as at when due. In fact, some of them, sometimes we see that they get involved in crime. They go as far as stealing those things that they have been deployed to go protect because their salaries are just so meager. From the point of view of your experience and encounter with the civil defense, for example, is there something that is being done within the salaries of these operatives?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Victoria. And from our experience and our research, obviously, one of the key challenges facing the sector is the compensation issue of the wages. And from the stakeholders forum, the 6 zonal stakeholders forum we had with the stakeholders in the sector, these are one of the challenges they are bringing up. That because of the poor, some of the times, it's not actually they are making. You know, they do pay by what they are paid by their clients. So so that is actually what informs what they eventually pay the officers or the personnel at the field. So we are looking at collectively what can be done, and that could bring into issue the standardization of the sector. And I told you currently the agency being supported by AfriLaw and the CAF is reviewing the legal framework to bring in some standardization, because if we are able to say this is a match list, the minimum wage that every person that is seeking the service of a private security personnel, this is the minimum wage you should pay. If it's provided, you find that many of the company, the clients will have to come up. You know, if you need the service of private security providers, this is what the law of the regulation provided, that you should pay them. And with that kind of provision, we think that it's going to help to improve the
welfare.
The welfare, and also there is a lot of welfare. The legal framework that is being done now is very comprehensive, covering every area of the sector, trying to make sure that that the sector is well positioned, looking at the high demand of the industry and the relevant efforts they are making currently because of the high security. There is need, and I'm very happy with the government, our present government, and the agency, the civil defense, because they're actually taking the bull by the horn by trying to reform the industry. And with the support that they have, and AfriLaw is giving them and other stakeholders, we are believing that within a short time, there will be a change. And everybody will be happy for that.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you for your presentation. Quite comprehensive and very, very insightful. Thank you. You can now turn off your video. We are going to the next speaker, and that is Jonah Eromon. Yeah, thank you, Chinweke. Jonah session for me, the session that Jonah will be taking right now is the most important, if you ask me. And for so many of you that have been staying back and wondering how should I go about the certification, what should I do, what are the requirements, this is the session for you to sit back, relax, and avoid all kinds of distractions. So Jonah is the African director of MSS Global. He is an impact field service delivery strategist. His professional endeavors in the industry cuts across the diverse areas of service delivery, strategy formulation and implementation, customer care operations, management systems that has to do with ISO 9001.2015. Auditing, compliance, learning and development, and so on. He is currently advocating for companies to embrace international best practices in the private security sector, as he believes that the private sector can set the pace in Africa, thus creating awareness for governments to take after. today he will be speaking to us on how to become ICoCa certified. Welcome to the platform, Jonah.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I'll just share my screen. All right, good morning, everyone. Just like she just said, my name is Jonah Eromon, Director of MSS Africa, and I'll be talking about becoming certified in the next few minutes. All right, first and foremost, I just want to thank everyone that has spoken. I want to thank Frank. He has actually laid the basis for what I'll be saying. I want to thank Jamie. I also want to thank Adedeji, as well as Barrister Chinweke. Yeah, that shortly the narrative will change in our client here in Nigeria and across the continent. Now, more than ever before, the clamor for the respect of human rights is louder. People are more aware of their rights now. Thus, it makes absolute sense to begin to pay attention to it as business owners. Now, I'll be talking about becoming ICoCa certified in 3 simple steps. The first step is your internal preparations as a company. Second is recognized certification audits. And third is ICoCa certification. Now, the first thing you might want to do is to become an affiliate or transitional member of ICoCa. We have the executive director here who has spoken much about it. I'm not going to say much about that. Just visit the website. The link is there. Go to ICoCa website to get more details on how to become an affiliate member. Right now, once you have indicated interest, next thing you need to do is to ensure implementation of the recognized standard. Now, this step is key to your company becoming certified. This is the largest piece of work you need to do. Your leadership need to drive it, providing direction and resources, okay? For most private security companies, the first thing that comes to mind they try to do is the thought of getting a consultant to help them prepare them for this stage. Now, while that is a good step to take, I think what is critical at this stage is an understanding of the criteria, the standard being audited against. Now, in this case, say 18788. Now, you need to, what you need to do is you need to get staff to understand the criteria, to understand the requirements that is necessary. Now, once that is done, then you may begin to think of then doing a gap analysis. Now, the good thing about this stage of the process is that there are many resources out there to help. For example, MSS Global has an e-gap analysis tool to help if you come into contract with us. Now, the gap analysis entails the firm looking at where the company is now and the intended destination based on the standard being assessed. Now, from my experience auditing companies, I've observed over time that sometimes during audits, you discover that companies may not have whistleblower policies, right? Like a policy allowing both internal and external stakeholders to report all unethical or illegal work or actions. Sometimes you discover there might not be human rights impact assessments, right? Or sometimes no operational risk assessment. Now, these are gaps. Now, once you've identified the gaps, you develop an action plan that identifies what needs to be done to address the gaps identified, who is responsible to close out the gaps, and when this will be closed out. Having done that, then you go ahead to implement your action plan. You go ahead to implement. Now, that brings us into step 2, once you're sure that internal preparations have been concluded, then you can now apply to apply to MSS Global. Now, we are a UCAS accredited and ICoCa recognized certification body. Our audit reports and certification as external assessors form the major parts of your ICoCa certified membership evidence. Now, we will send you, when you apply, we send you some forms so that we can understand your company and operations. We'll then give you a no obligation cost estimate. Now, once contracted, we will give you free access to our online gap analysis tool to support your internal preparation. So we don't just leave you like that. Once you come into contract with us, we also give you the opportunity to support you, right? Well, we are not consultants, we are auditors, right? But we still support our clients. Now, we provide guidance videos. We also provide an action plan template to help preparations. All right. Now, there are free resources online for, that you can actually leverage on during this stage. Okay. We also have, so you can also visit the ICoCa website for free resources, right, to help you at this stage. When you go online, there are a lot of support tools that you can leverage on. May I also mention at this stage that if you go to our website, we have what we call the education suite that can also help you at this stage. Now, having done all this, now the next thing you might need to do, or haven't done all this, then we can now start talking about your company being audited. Now, once you come into contract with us, we initiate the audit process. The diagram on my slide represents the progression that our clients go through when they come into contract. Now, year 0 entails a pre-assessment, likewise stage 1 and stage 2. Year 1 and year 2, you go through what we call a surveillance audit to reaffirm the effectiveness of your system. Then in year 3, we come back to recertify the company. Now, in stage 1, the auditor will look at whatever documentation you have and those which the standard require, but with more focus on how the company runs. That is critical, or how the company is managed and how the requirements of the standard have been woven into the company, how the company is managed. Now, also in stage 1, we conduct interviews with your functional leads, key management staff involved in the leadership of the company. During the audit, the auditor's job is to confirm evidence of conformance. To do that, first, they first need to understand the company, the context in which it operates, and most importantly, the processes which management use to manage the business. May I state at this point that the stage 1 audit is the auditor basically trying to understand the process, the cross-functional process of that organization. Now, in stage 2, what we do basically is we review records and we interview people and clients. Now, critical at this stage is site visitation for us, where we speak to, our site visitation is critical for us because where we have the opportunity to speak to operational staff. We'll be assessing to verify that your system of control is reliable, repeatable, and effective. You remember when Frank was talking, he talked about predictability. You should be able to predict the system. Now, if you are successful at this stage, then we issue you a certificate. Now, once you've gotten that certificate, it brings you to step 3. Now, you contact the ICoCa secretariat to receive the application form. You need to complete and submit this to them with supporting documents, including our certification and audit reports and some additional information they will ask for. ICoCa will review our audit report and your additional evidence and make a recommendation to the ICoCa board. And if you are successful, I'd like to say, congratulations. You are now ICoCa certified. Now, subject to ICoCa board approval, you become a certified member of the ICoCa. But there's a point here you need to note that the certification to an ICoCa recognized standard must be current for the ICoCa certification to be valid. Now, in conclusion, I would like to state that certification is a straightforward process. It demonstrates a commitment to meet international best management standards and respect for human rights. It puts your organization in the spotlight as a responsible private security company, as companies in the ICoCa list are seen as industry leaders in providing security services, often in challenging and complex environments. Responsible private security companies can have a positive impact for their clients. You heard Adedeji say that earlier. The local population in the area of operation, there's also an impact there. The general security environment, the enjoyment of human rights, and the rule of law. Now, finally, I would like to say that, like I've always said, that if the government must begin to look at the private sector for solutions to security challenges, then we must rise to the task. Thank you very much. If you have questions, you can always direct your questions to me via my email, or you can ask them now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonah, for keeping it very brief and concise. Thank you so much. The questions, I'm sure they will continue to come until we are done with this conference. As soon as we have any question that relates to what you have presented, we'll channel the question to you. Thank you. It is now very clear on how we should go about being certified. But the most important thing is that at the end of this conference, the slides, the presentation deck is going to be made available to all the attendees. And I'm hopeful that it's going to be quite invaluable for each and every one of them, because they will be looking to making reference to them. We'll be ending in a very short while, but before we call it a day and take the last session of the questions, I want to call back Frank. Frank, please, I just want you in 5 minutes to talk to us about the lessons learned or lessons identified from a private security company who has gone through these whole processes that Jonah just highlighted. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Victoria. And I'm going to try to be extremely brief and straight to the point. So, in talking about the lessons learned, I think there are a few things. And I start off with a point that we are a small, medium private security company that has successfully gone through this certification process, operating in an environment that is extremely competitive and also challenging. And so there are a few things that I think people can put on under their sleeve to help them make that decision or to have that leap forward. Oops. Okay, so there are a few things. There are 3 things. One is the commercial and operational interest, if I have to say something. So more or less that one, we have a better understanding of our non-conformities, because you go through the entire process, you're able to identify them, you're able to work towards them, and you're able to implement some corrective actions that may come up. 2, we're able to maintain better control of our operations, i.e. looking at our suppliers and also our third-party interested people. And also we're able to now bid on projects that require the certifications and don't have to complete lengthy questionnaires, because we would have achieved that over a period. I mean, one simple certification fun fact is the fact that although you are having all of these benefits, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an easy pass through. There's heavy demand on staff effort, and Jonah has alluded to that fact. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done. There are online reviews, and also there are time resources that you need to commit to the entire process. Secondly, in terms of professional culture development, we looked at it differently in the sense that we don't have a separate compliance department, and so it's the entire core team that did cross-training, and so they're able to get through the whole process. And in going through the whole process, it opens up a lot of opportunities for everybody. It empowers the employees to be able to understand why it is important to do this and the benefits that comes to us by going through the process. It also provides a clear and concise instructions on job description and quality objectives, so people know why we are in this in the first place and the benefits that would accrue for us, short, medium, and long term. And also by going through the process, there are a couple of tools that you develop that would help in terms of getting your work done. So you have work instructions, you have procedures, and besides prompt and actionable feedback on employee performance and process metrics, you're able to quantify all the efforts that you are putting into the activity. And third, but not the least, is to improve on control over the security business. Everybody would understand that the more control you have over your operations, the better for you. So the escalation process includes examining, evaluating, tracking, and also determining the efficacy of the quality control programs we have in place. So if it's not working, then it can be addressed. If it's not giving you the maximum yield, then you're able to address it. And you have a 360 view of what it is that needs to be addressed. So you are not firefighting, like I said previously. And in doing so, we're able to also produce performance metrics. So we know what we are measuring ourselves against. We're not just throwing things out there because we have to throw them in there, which are a better part of important instrument for gaining insight into our business and making better choices at both the strategic and operational level. The decision making is quicker, and there's a quick turnaround, and you're able to implement things in a more strategic way. And also it allows us to determine how well the business is performing and where the business needs to improve, which is a key thing. If we talk about the business continuity, this is one of the things that you need to understand. You have your foresight analysis, you understand where the business is heading, and then you're able to plan towards that so you don't get surprises or you don't get surprised along the way. In essence, there are a few take-home messages. If we, Landmark Security and an SME, a small medium enterprise, with less resources, without all this standalone compliance department, not operating or more or less operating an environment where maintaining standards are a big challenge. If we, SME, we can do this, then obviously it tells us that everybody else on this call beyond can also do this or can get this achieved. Really, it comes back to having the appetite to do what is right and being ethical in your operations. And like Jamie alluded to also during his presentation, there are things that, it's given, more or less. We've gotten to the point where things need to happen. It's not about storytelling. It's not about looking at what physical or what bottom line benefit do I get, but it's something that needs to happen along the line. And so the point is to encourage everyone that if we can do it, you obviously can do it as well. And we don't even have the full complement of a compliance department. So it's something that is doable. And I'm sure MSS Global and other partners are able to assist and help you to be able to get through some of these things. So I'll end by saying that thank MSS Global and thank everyone for being on the call and giving us the opportunity to present our case. And we hope that we would have made an impact in the lives of some other security companies and giving them the opportunity to also look at how they can get involved in some of these conversations. Thank you. Over.
Thank you so much, Frank, for coming back the second time and for shooting harder this time around. You just clarified in this second session what the expectations are. I'm so glad to announce that we do not have so many questions right now in the question and answer segment of the platform. That is to say that the participants understood very well what the presentations are all about. But I want to take just one question, and it's important to me because this question is coming all the way from India. And this person wants to know, because he's very curious, he got into the presentation and he really wants to know what it takes to create awareness about ICoCa in that Asian continent, right? Yeah, in Asia, especially in India. I don't know if Jamie is still on the call. Jamie, please, if you're on the call, please, could you just throw more light or give an insight on what this person should do to create awareness about ICoCa? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. Good question. So, awareness building starts with having local partners. So, as individuals, one can join the association as observers. We already have a couple of companies operating in India, and I think it's very much replicating what we've done as part of this event. It's trying to find local partners as well as international partners to push a bit of a communication and outreach sort of discussion with key regulators, with key associations to highlight and address these issues. If he wants to know more, he can contact us directly. I think I'll send him a direct message as well in the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for keeping it so brief. So to round off, I just want to thank each and every one of you for attending and staying to the end. I want to share a personal experience I've had in the course of my career to buttress the importance of being certified. We can never overemphasize the need for being certified. That is one of the things that carves a niche for you, that stands you out among the so many competitors that we have in today's industry, considering the fact that the world is growing so rapidly on a very fast pace. What you know today or what you have as an edge may be irrelevant tomorrow. And the reason why you get certified is because there's always need for recertification. And so what that means is that as you continue to recertify, you are updating whatever knowledge it is you have within the industry. Long time ago when I was in the, anyway, it was not a long time ago, let me say, yeah, about 6 years ago when I took my first certification as a security professional. That was when I was in the law enforcement, right? I wanted to transition. I wanted to leave the law enforcement. I tried all I could. In fact, there are some months that I send out up to 30 applications and I really never get responses. Nobody calls back to say, nobody says, we've seen your application, we are working on them, whether I was successful or not. Nobody sends that response. But the moment I took my PCI certification, and I passed the PCI, and I put the PCI after my name as one of my post-nominals. In fact, it was not up to 2 weeks I wrote the PCI. I got the first job interview with the United States mission in Nigeria. And that marked a turning point for me. Some of these things could be very rigorous. They could be very custom. They could be very, very expensive sometimes. But at the end of the day, when you look at the many benefits, you see that the processes you've gone through, the benefits you are getting cannot be equated with whatever it is you have gone through as stress to get to where you are. Nothing stands you out like setting the standard, setting the pace. We have not completely equipped you to go create the, we are not saying that now we have private security companies that are going out there to set the standards and to create the platform. What we have succeeded in doing is to give you the knowledge that you require to do things better, because at the end of the day, knowledge is power. And our expectation is that you continue to reach out to ICoCa through ICoCa's website, and you continue to reach out to MSS Global through MSS Global's website for any support that you may be needing regarding how to get certified and how to stay on top of your game in this very competitive industry. Once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this conference, and hopefully going to meet again sometimes anywhere within the industry. We look forward to welcoming you maybe in the next edition of this conference. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of your day.